was no collusion with Russia. There was no obstruction, and none whatsoever. And it was a complete and total exoneration. This was an illegal takedown that failed. And hopefully, somebody's going to be looking at the other side.
President Trump is wrong. This report does not amount to a so-called total exoneration. Special Counsel Mueller was clear that his report, quote, does not exonerate, close quote, the president. It is unconscionable that President Trump would try to spin the special counsel's findings as if his conduct was remotely acceptable.
Total exoneration or something short of that. Attorney General Bill Barr's 4-page summary of the Mueller report has settled some of the big questions, most importantly on the issue of collusion. While we have not seen the Mueller report in its entirety, we can say a few things with confidence. The Mueller report found no proof that the Trump campaign conspired with Russia. No conclusions were made about whether the president obstructed justice, and Mueller left any charging decisions to Barr and to the Justice Department.
Most of those points are certainly good news for the president and his supporters. President Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, says the president has been entirely vindicated and welcomes the release of the Mueller report. He joins us now. Mr. Mayor, always good to see you. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you
for
having me.
Obviously a big win for the president.
Sure,
but what are some of the dynamics we need to be aware of now?
Well, first of all, this is about as clear a vindication or exoneration that you can get from a prosecutor. Prosecutors are not in the business of exonerating you. They're in the business of determining, is there enough evidence to bring a case? Well, on both scores, obstruction and conspiracy, collusion, not enough evidence to bring. Even Mueller says that. Now, Barr and Rosenstein, not just Barr, Barr and Rosenstein, the man who started this case, the man who's been on the hot seat throughout, the man who knows this case as well as Mueller and his people, came to the conclusion no obstructive conduct. So they come to the definitive conclusion that it's very unusual. So that's why I say he's completely vindicated. I think most people who are in this business, prosecutors, defense lawyers, would tell you, you don't do better than that. And now we get a guy like Nadler who doesn't even pause. Like, calm down, Jerry. How about apologizing? The president overstated it? You're the one who said he colluded. You're the one who said you wanted to impeach him before you even saw the report. So maybe you shouldn't be so phony. It's so obvious that all you care about is politics. How about, this is a good day for America. We found out our president wasn't a criminal. Thank God. Now let's move on and ask some questions about these other things. They don't even have the grace and dignity to do that. Him, Schiff, Schwal, I can't pronounce his name. Schwalwell. And Pelosi and Schumer are now attacking Barr's biased, right? Because he has a different view of obstruction than they do. By the way, that's the classic view of obstruction. And I just ask people at home with common sense, where's the obstruction? The case went to conclusion. Mueller wasn't fired. Trump didn't destroy his cell phones.
No official act of any kind.
He didn't destroy servers. Yeah. He didn't delete emails. Somebody I know did those three things, and Comey said no prosecutor would ever bring that case. How could this be obstruction when she destroyed servers and emails and she's sitting home free?
So to that point, now the president called previously for a complete release of the report. Is that still the position? And wouldn't that help you further make the case? If the American people could see what the special counsel found, what he didn't find, so that we could put the conspiracy theories to bed.
I'm willing to rebut anything in that report. I'm ready to do it. I have an 87-page report. Jay Sekulow, Marty and Jane Raskin. Mm-hmm. We've been working on this for 5 months. The president announced a couple months ago it was 87 pages. Probably around that. I'd love to have an opportunity to knock it out of the park. Like this obstruction thing. You go tell me how there's obstruction when he completed his investigation and nothing was destroyed.
Have you seen the report,
we have a person in America who destroyed 30,000 emails, who destroyed servers, who brought somebody in with a hammer to do it.
Have you seen the report yourself?
And she's free. And you, Jerry Nadler, want to investigate us for obstruction? How about you investigate her for
Hillary
obstruction?
Clinton's already been investigated. But
no, she has not been.
Have you seen the report?
Hillary Clinton's Hillary, you're going to tell me we're going to investigate further on obstruction, and she's sitting at home and she had somebody destroy her cell phones that were evidence? Ain't going to happen as long as I'm here. I will scream out in front of any court anywhere. You want to investigate this any further, you tell me how you can let Hillary Clinton off the hook when she deleted 30,000 emails. He didn't delete a single email. They got 1.4 million records. They got 40 witnesses. We didn't object. They got every piece of information they wanted. So stop doing a Weissman con job on obstruction, because that's what it is.
Have you seen the Mueller report yourself?
No, but I know the case backwards and forwards. I know what they can write and what they can't write, and I know some of their cockamamie theories.
And what are some of the things that you prepared in your response? What were you planning to
What I just told you
respond to?
about obstruction. I'd love to argue that in front of a jury. I'd love to argue in front of a jury, because that would mean we'd have a trial. We shouldn't have a trial because it's unfair. But maybe we could have one in public.
Well, did you think that it was a violation of prosecutorial or investigative ethics for Mueller to say that he essentially, it was a close call on obstruction? There was some, there wasn't some.
Yeah, I mean,
could have gone either way. Is that unusual?
Yeah, it's a Comey. It's a Comey. I would call that a Comey, which is what he did to Hillary, which I think was horribly unfair. He should have prosecuted her, right, by the way. That case was a slam dunk case of obstruction of justice, destroying government records, lying.
Espionage Act violation.
Espionage Act violation. Oh, my God. I never saw better evidence of obstruction. Destroying evidence. However, he decided not to. Once you decide not to, you can't go say all the things bad about that person. So now the person can't defend themselves. That is a basic rule of prosecutorial ethics. Now, Mueller's people didn't go that far. They did more of a jab, which is, well, we can't exonerate. That's not your job, pal, to exonerate. You got a question to answer. Is there enough evidence to bring a case? No. You'd get laughed out of court if you tried to bring an obstruction case. It'd be a joke. And they know that. But they have these people. Look, these people hate Donald Trump.
Is Mueller a partisan, in your view?
Mueller, I don't think Mueller's a partisan. Mueller had the bad judgment to hire rabid Democrats to do an objective investigation and then want us to believe it's objective. He took Peter Strzok as his top agent. Peter Strzok is on tape saying he hates the president. The president is an animal. The president is disgusting. The president should be prevented from being president, and then he should be taken out if he becomes president. That was his insurance policy. And we have those tweets back and forth with his girlfriend. He ran this investigation. He's the guy who went after Flynn. He was there a long time. It wasn't as if they got rid of him right away. A lot of other people had that same bias. Jeannie Rhee was counsel to the Clinton Foundation. Suppose I was investigating Hillary Clinton and I hired counsel to the Trump Foundation. This town would go nuts. But there's a double standard in this town. You can do anything to a Republican. It doesn't matter. Violate their rights, have biased prosecutors. You can't touch Hillary Clinton, and she deleted 30,000 emails. Believe me, if Donald Trump had deleted 30,000 emails, Nadler would be delighted.
The president used the word.
It's a shame. These people are actually unhappy that the president was exonerated of collusion. They can't escape the fact he was exonerated of the thing that started all of this, which raises the question, who made it up? Who made this up? If it's not true, this didn't come out of thin air. It wasn't like, oh, gee, colluded with the Russians.
What has to happen to get... I'm sorry, Katie,
I was just going to say, do you think it's a good thing for the country, though, that we dug into this, that we had a fulsome investigation, that many people have a lot of confidence in? I mean, you have confidence in Mueller. I think Democrats have a lot of confidence in him as well. Is it a good thing for the country that we had this fulsome investigation?
No. It's a very bad thing for the country that we had it, because it's not true. It never should have happened in the first place.
But it is true that the Russians did intervene in the election to try to influence the result.
It should have stopped with the indictment of the Russians when there was no American they conspired with. Gee, somebody should have said, ooh. Oh, these bunch of Russians tried to You don't think Russians have interfered in a prior election?
And DOJ could investigate that without a special counsel.
You don't think other countries interfere in elections? I mean, people got to wake up. But the extraordinary thing about this is not that the Russians tried to interfere in our election. They should not have, and then we should stop from doing that, and it's terrible. The extraordinary thing is they basically charged the president with treason. And in fact, that's what Brennan said it was, treason. Where's that phony now? Where is he, Mr. Intelligence Man?
You're mentioning a few things I want to follow up on. How do we get answers about how we got to? You rightly point out that they said the president betrayed the country.
There are
very senior government officials in the Obama administration, predominantly.
Yeah, I'm not saying.
But who needs to be investigated? What information needs to come out? What are you going to get now?
First of all, let me distinguish two things. I'm not saying that any of these Democrats who are made these overstatements about collusion or were involved in making this up or anything like that. I think. Look, if they would have...
Brennan might have been, actually.
Well, Brennan...
he was there at the CIA.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. I'm talking about the elected officials. They're playing politics, and it's a shame. I mean, they lost one political battle, because they see this as a political battle. Mm-hmm. I mean, the difference with Mueller and even his crazy, rabid Democrats are they're lawyers, and they couldn't finally make up what isn't there. They're not that bad, right? But the things they did to Manafort and the things they did to Flynn... And I know witnesses, I can't tell you who, but I know witnesses who went in there, just witnesses, who told you they were treated horribly. One witness, 4 lawyers and 6 FBI agents. This isn't John Gotti, and it's not.
Should there be a pardon or commutation?
Bin Laden.
Should there be a pardon or a commutation for Flynn and for Manafort?
I'm not going to talk about pardons, commutation, anything like that. I mean, that came up during the investigation. Our answer was always the same. This is not the right time. This is not the time that it should be done. What happens in the future happens in the future.
But how do we get answers to the questions about how we got to this point?
Investigate.
As you said.
Investigate. Put
Who should
people
do
under
that
oath.
and what should be done?
Well, let's find out about the Steele dossier. Let's get them under oath on that. Who paid for it? How could you have accepted? Let's start with questioning people about the Pfizer warrant. Why did they know that Steele hadn't been in Russia for 9 years? He writes this definitive memo on Russia, and the liar wasn't in Russia for 9 years. He writes that Cohen was in Prague. All you got to do is look at Cohen's passport. He'd never been to Prague.
So how do you square,
He writes ridiculous things about
Yeah, we know.
Yeah,
we know about those.
Ridiculous. Look, I'm a professional. I've done this for 20 years. I just was talking to a former prosecutor at another station. He said, the minute you read 2 pages of that, you know it's a piece of National Enquirer propaganda. Political oppo research for which they paid $1.1 million. That's not an intelligence document. It's not even written as one. It would jump out at you. How they could attach that to a Pfizer affidavit under oath, where you've got a solemn obligation to tell the truth. It's a one-sided process in the Pfizer court. How they could do that and not say, in bold print to the judges, Hillary Clinton paid $1.1 million for this. Steele wasn't in Russia for 9 years.
And said it was raw intelligence, that it wasn't even finished analysis of his own document.
And they're supposed to give the other side, because there is no other side. You're at the mercy of the prosecutor. Terrible process.
Does total exoneration, which is what the president said, and what you've said as well, square with a report that what we know of it explicitly says it does not exonerate the president on the issue of obstruction?
Well, it does exonerate the president. You got to read the next 2 paragraphs, which Democrats want to ignore. The next 2 paragraphs go on to say, Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein and I and the Office of Legal Counsel have looked at the evidence, and there is no evidence of obstructive conduct.
Now, how did they determine that?
That's the Attorney General of the United States. That's the Deputy Attorney General of the United States.
How did they determine that so quickly when they just had received the report?
Rosenstein didn't just receive the report.
Oh,
Rosenstein's been involved in this investigation from day one. He appointed Mueller.
Okay.
He's been in touch with this investigation. I've had, when we had problems, we met with the Justice Department at times. One time, actually. They're very, very conversant with the case. It's their case. Mueller works for he's not independent counsel in the sense of independent of the Justice Department. He works for the Justice Department. He has to follow the rules of the Justice Department. The final decision, as all decisions of the Justice Department, is the Attorney General's decision, not his. And if you want to impugn Barr's credibility, good luck. I just want you to look at that guy's career. I want you to go talk to the people in the Washington bar who know him. This guy is not going to put his name on something that isn't absolutely 100% solid. And I'd put his integrity against Weissman, because Weissman is the one who put the cheap shot in, I'm sure.
Now, there's a difference between...
You've got a Jekyll and Hyde situation in the Mueller camp. You got some very good people there, and you got some very, very partisan, rabid Democrats whose legal judgment is overwhelmed by their deep emotion.
Well, how does that square, though, with the fact that, this is a good result for you, for the president. This is a good result. So if these individuals were so partisan, How did the result come out so favorably?
You can't make up what you don't have. I mean, they tried. Go listen to Corsi yesterday on Fox and Friends. Corsi, if you believe him, says they gave me a script and wanted me to say that in order to get probation. You don't think they did it to Manafort? Manafort's sitting in solitary confinement. Weissman brings him in and says, "You know about collusion with the Russians." He says, "I don't." "You know about collusion with the Russians." Then he gets sent back to solitary confinement, and they let him sit there for 3 or 4 days. Why? Because they want him to say, "I can get out of solitary confinement if I say what Weissman wants me to say." Go read the book by Sidney Powell. The guy's done it before. It's a disgrace that he was allowed into this investigation, and that those tactics should be prohibited by the Justice Department. After you get 2 or 3 refusals from a guy that you have under intense situation of confinement, now you're starting to get to the point where you may be suborning perjury.
So on the issue of, on a separate issue of campaign finance, alleged campaign finance violations, payoffs of Stormy Daniels, Karen McDougal, could you just lay out for us what the timeline was, what the president knew, what he understood to be doing, what those checks are?
Not this morning. I'll give you one general. Maybe we should just take a day to say all these other things are now being pursued. And who knows what else? He probably didn't pay some parking tickets 10, 15 years ago. I guess Nadler may find that out. Maybe Nadler didn't pay some parking tickets. I don't know. But this is so totally unfair. Any human being should not be subjected to their whole life being investigated. That's ridiculous. We don't do that in America. If we did that to any president of the United States,
An illegal payoff, if that's what happened, is something the American people should know about, correct?
What was an illegal payoff?
Paying off Stormy Daniels.
That's not an illegal payoff.
Well, it is if you are supposed to report that on your campaign finance report for the FEC. That's what's illegal.
Well, every FEC commissioner that I've read says it's not a campaign contribution. The only person who says it's a campaign contribution are the prosecutors. I mean, they've tried this theory before and lost.
That's not exactly correct.
Yes,
I mean, you're talking about with John Edwards?
Absolutely.
Well, the jury hung on all but one count, and also that's not a precedent.
Of course it's not. However, the fact that the FEC never moved against him and considered the case.
But Cohen did plead guilty to it.
Cohen would plead guilty to anything you asked him to plead guilty to. Cohen also said he didn't ask for a job. Cohen also said he didn't ask for a pardon. When are they going to prosecute that perjury? Remember Cummings? Oh, if he lies, we're going to throw the book at him. Boy, that book is sitting in Cummings' desk. He lied brazenly in front of Cummings. I will tell you, he asked me to get him a job with Trump.
Yeah.
The liar. He's on the Cuomo show saying he wants to be chief of staff. They could prosecute him with television in the courtroom. Just testimony before Cummings, never asked for a job. Chris Cuomo, right at that time, saying, "Oh, good luck in becoming chief of staff." I put 10 witnesses up he went to for a job. Didn't ask for a pardon. Mike Kelly didn't ask for a pardon. His lawyers asked me for a pardon. His lawyers asked Jay Sekulow for a pardon. His lawyers will testify they asked for a pardon. Those are material things. The man's trying to paint himself as...
What was the response back to those requests?
Dead silence, just like my request they apologize for collusion, because they're not interested in something I'm interested in.
What do you think
Justice,
of the
fairness,
media coverage?
Decency, truth.
Now that
they don't care. All they care about is take out Trump, take out Trump. How could he have won? Hillary should be president. I guess so she could destroy more cell phones and servers.
What do you think of the media coverage since the summary has come out? I mean, New York Times and others have been very unequivocal about saying this summary says there was no collusion with the Russians. Do you think that the coverage? Do you think it's been fair?
But AG doesn't exonerate him on obstruction.
Well,
wrong.
No, the AG does, but the report does not.
Go look at the headline.
The report does not.
The headline says AG. The subheadline says AG. They can't help it. They can't help it. They can't just say, let's take one day and say a massive burden is now off our shoulders. The President of the United States did not collude with the Russians, and everybody who says it should now have to go through one day of penance. Then they can move on to try to frame him for something else, and we'll fight that.
Speaking of penance, yesterday Alan Dershowitz said that CNN should be ashamed of its coverage of this entire situation for 2 years. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I think it's fair. Go get the tape. Play play the statements that they were making. Bombshell announcement, Papadopoulos is going to take Trump down. Bombshell announcement, Flynn is going to take him down. Cohen is going to take him down. The only thing Cohen did is take himself down. I mean, the guy goes and testifies a couple of weeks ago. It's the most pathetic performance I've ever seen. He doesn't just tell lies, he tells stupid lies. Who prepared him to testify? Schiff. For 12 hours they prepare him, and the guy goes in there and he lies 2, 3, 4 times. Didn't they bother to check out whether there was a tape of him asking for a job? All you got to do is Google it. These guys they're so used to getting away with it because the press treats Democrats differently than they do Republicans. If you think that this is the way Hillary Clinton would have been treated, wrong. She'd have been treated you get to see the report before you get interviewed. You get the questions in the debate before you go out for the debate from Donald Brazil. I mean, it's a total double standard.
Do you believe that Hillary Clinton should be further investigated, and do you think the Trump Justice Department would consider prosecuting?
I'm not going to get into that. I think this whole thing should be investigated, and we should find out who did it. And I think I have no reason to believe she has any role in this, so I'm not suggesting that. Mm-hmm. I think the Hillary Clinton thing, I don't know if it should be investigated. That's up to the Attorney General. I mean, that's both sides there we're rehashing something we've spent an awful lot of time on, and we have to move on one case. Mm-hmm. The other case, it really was a miscarriage of justice. It's very hard for a Justice Department to prosecute other people for obstruction of justice who haven't destroyed emails, who haven't destroyed servers, who haven't destroyed cell phones, who haven't destroyed evidence. Takes a lot of credibility away from the system, from the Justice Department after Comey did that fix.
So your guy is, at least on the issue of collusion, exonerated.
Yeah, and on the issue of obstruction, what would you like to call it?
What would
you like to call it? He's not exonerated. The Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General of the United States.
So we'll just,
But he doesn't get to do that. Prosecutors don't get to exonerate.
My question, though, is a different one, though. Was this a witch hunt?
Of course it was. Of course it was. Who came up with the idea that is false, that Donald Trump colluded with the Russians, or people in Donald Trump's campaign colluded with? Who came up with that idea?
Well, there were a lot of contacts, and there was a lot of lying around what those contacts were.
There were as many contacts with Russians as there were with English and French. And in a campaign...
But there was a lot less lying about contacts with English and French people.
The lying is like stupidest little lies you could imagine. I mean, the Flynn lie, the FBI originally thought was the truth. The guy didn't remember a meeting. During a campaign in which I worked on that campaign 12, 14 hours a day. Bet you asked me, I can't remember meetings that I had during that period of time. I mean, it's so unfair. And they had the document in the drawer when they asked him that. It was a trap. It was a complete trap. And they tried to very, very artfully make sure he didn't have a lawyer because they went around the White House counsel. Pretty sneaky stuff.
Well, what Flynn is accused of lying of and pled guilty to was having contact with the Russians and discussing sanctions, which he then misled Vice President Pence over. So it was after the campaign, before the inauguration.
Yeah, and well after the hacking took place. So how can that be a conspiracy? The only conspiracy that would be a crime is if Donald Trump or a member of the campaign conspired to hack the DNC and Hillary Clinton. Once the hacking takes place and the fruits of that are given out to the press. I mean, the New York Times and the Washington Post published the Pentagon Papers case. They were stolen from the Defense Department. That's stolen property. Mm-hmm. They're not prosecuted for it because they have a First Amendment right to publish it. Once Assange got it, he had a right to publish it. Now, I don't know if Assange did anything wrong in getting it. If he did, he should be prosecuted. If he didn't, if it was just given to him, Assange is no different than any media person. And everybody gladly printed it. Nobody didn't print it and go, oh, my God, that's stolen material. And people also forget it's also true. All those bad things that came out on those tapes about Podesta and her, and it's all true.
So, Mayor, I know we've got to let you go. You got other places to be. But I wanted to, do you know when you will see the report? Do you have any expectation of when you'll see it?
First of all, I think most of it will come out. They got to get through two major hurdles. One major hurdle is grand jury material. I don't know how the report's written. Is it written like in narrative form, or is it commentary? If it's a lot of excerpts from things, that'd be pretty easy. You just take out the grand jury stuff. And most of the stuff said in a grand jury is probably said in an interview.
Right.
And you can give that over. They could also go to court and get a 6E order from a judge if
What's that?
The 6E order is an order that allows you to give out grand jury material. If you don't get the 6E order and you give it out, it's a 5-year felony. So people have to appreciate the fact that those lawyers in the Justice Department are sitting there. They make a mistake. I don't think anybody will prosecute them, but they make a little mistake. But in this town, who knows? I mean, they're the Trump Justice Department. Maybe if they make a mistake on grand jury material, they'll go to jail for 5 years, even though they didn't destroy a server.
All right, Mr. Mayor.
Great to have you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Next on Rising, what's left for the legal investigation surrounding the president?
Former federal prosecutor Gene Rossi is going to give us a little judicial roadmap when Rising continues.